My name's Grant Lebahn. I am the owner of Resource Gravity, which is a self-owned consulting company, and I focus on strategy and helping small businesses in general get better at strategy, tactics, and consistency. And so I have put together these four different uh, areas to look through and to use this as a guide. And hopefully here today we're gonna hit the last two portions. Yesterday we went through, and I'll pull up my slides here really fast and share them. Let me see if I can share. All right, so whoops, that's not the one I wanted to go to though. Okay. All right. So yesterday we went through the first two concepts yesterday, which were concept number one was looking into and validating where your current business life cycle is, and where you're looking back a little bit, or looking where you're at globally with your leadership team, and understanding where your life cycle is or what you want to achieve inside of your life cycle. Concept number two was in the afternoon, and we talked about a little bit about some ideas on strategy and a concept on strategy, and looking at the different levels that may be required, or where strategy needs to be applied. With different types of strategy, applying strategy everywhere sometimes is not possible, and you need to be a little more refined on what that looks like. So there were some ideas there about the different levels. And so today we're going to finish up with talking about how tactics apply to strategy, and enabling, some example or some ideas about how to apply tactics to strategy, the strategy that you need or choose to use. And then last but not least is going to be how to utilize consistency throughout all of the three stages. So um, and then sorry, one last piece here, just kind of as a global thought. Clarity is always the key. So the goal of this whole battle is always to stay clear on the message, and align and stay about clarity and consistency throughout all of these different concepts. So with that, I'm going to kind of jump in here and talk just specifically about tactics. So this first question, I think, is always something that I find interesting. And when I start having discussions or talks about tactics and strategy. And so I believe that there's always this kind of what should I call it? A confusion possibly, or just misinterpretation sometimes, of the difference between what is the difference between tactics and strategy, and how are they different, and why are they different, and the need for them to be different. There's a lot of good strategies that are out there, and you can put things down on paper all day long and make strategies until the cows come home. But if you don't apply a tactic or put tactics into strategy, sometimes those strategies don't ever materialize into anything, and you look at them 6 months or a year from later, and all of a sudden you haven't moved anywhere, any direction you've had, any direction you've gone. So what the way that I define tactics, and I'm going to share some ideas here about tactics and the application of tactics and strategy. The way that I look at tactics are, it's the way, or the art or the skill in employing the available means to accomplish the end. So if you have a strategy, I'm going to talk about a couple of areas here just in the next couple slides here. But if you have a strategy or a long-term goal, and yesterday we talked about the three different areas of strategy. You can have company strategy, high-level strategy. You can have business strategy, which would be a specific area of your business that you want to have a strategy in. Or you could have functional strategy, which is, I want to make a functional area of my business have a strategy. That's your goal. So like next year I want to do this, or in 3 years we want to be here, or in however long you want to do this. That's the long-term goal. And so tactics are the actions you need to take, and the specific actions that happen are how that gets there. And sometimes I feel like I've been in conversations many times with lots of people where we talk about strategy and we say, man, we're going to get here, and this is how we're, it's like the parts and pieces are always just challenging to get to, and specifically the ideation required to get really tactical and make tactics actually work. So I think that if my bad comedian joke here at the bottom, but You all can read it. And so the differences are there, and it's something that I believe that to start out today's message, I just wanted to give a couple of examples of that, because I believe that there's a big difference, especially with some of the things and the concepts that are coming up here as we get through it. So I'm a sports guy. I've got 3 boys that played hockey. 2 of them played hockey. One actually plays lacrosse. And they're and in hockey, and I'm a hockey dad, and so I like hockey. And I don't know if you guys, people on the phone or on here on the meeting here, like hockey or not, but I believe that, you know, one of the ways to define tactics, and there's a ton of different ways to think about this tactically, like tactics. But I believe good way to always talk about tactics is talking about it in sports, right? And so I picked a hockey analogy here to kind of relate hockey tactics in sports, or a strategy and the tactics in sports. And the one that I chose was establishing puck position in the offensive zone. And so if you are a hockey person, you know that, you know, keeping the puck in the zone is a big deal for a hockey team. And if you don't, when you watch hockey, you know, that's one of the things that you see right away. They try to keep it in the zone, in the zone. And if you look at the graphic on the left, there's a blue line, and you got to keep it inside the blue line. And if it goes out of the blue line, everybody's got to come out of the zone. Everybody's got to go back in. So establishing that strategy is very important to the offense of hockey. And so the tactics that are used, and a couple of easy ones that you can see and watch, a tactic on the left, tactic number 1 is to use what's called a strong side chip, which means that as the, you know, attack is going in on the whatever side the defensive end, they will punch the puck off the wall, and it goes into off the boards, it goes into the zone, and the lead forward goes in and gets to the puck. And so that's a tactic that they used to do it. The other method is tactic 2, which is a dump in, which is I get across the red line and I just go ahead and fire it around the dump in and ring the puck around the outside of the board. And so simple ideas here, but very important, because I use these 2 ideas because in hockey, they use this consistently. There's consistency and there's clarity with these 2 strategies in hockey. Every team does this in hockey, right? And so the importance of learning this and understanding it and training even the littlest of kids. If you watch 8-year-olds playing hockey, what are we teaching them? Usually we're teaching them chip it up the boards. We're teaching them dump it in, right? I mean, so all of those things, the consistency and the clarity, even in sports of tactics, is there. And that relationship is so important for how we view and understand it as we train our employees and understand what tactics are. We can use this type of thought process and start very early on with tactics and align these tactics into what we do from the very beginning of how we do it. So I felt like this was a really good way to kind of start out, just kind of juices flowing about what it looks like and how it relates, and then why it's so important, because everybody from an 8-year-old or a little tiny little mini mite starting hockey all the way up to the NHL player, you know, all the way up to Nathan McKinnon of the Avs, uses these 2 tactics in hockey to make their game and strengthen their team and make things clear. So anyway, I'll get off my little hockey spiel here, but you guys can joke about that later on down the road here. I'm sure I'll hear it from Chris. So anyway, so in the same kind of thought process now, I'm going to use this into another example, another way, an application of tactics and strategy in what we do. And I'm going to keep it at a very high level. But a lot of times we can just simplify what we do into three different areas of, and I call it 3 wins. And I'm going to, again, like I said yesterday, I'm going to continue to evolve this thought process here, or this concept of the 3 wins. And so today's concepts and what we're going to talk about are going to kind of hopefully hone in on what that really looks like. But in general, I'm going to set up a hypothetical strategy called, we're going to set up a strategy in this hypothetical way to say, we're going to procure, plan, and build profitable work. Very basic, nothing special about this. No, earth shattering. Oh my God, we're like, changing the world with this. But if we can do this strategy, we can procure, plan, and build profitable work. By God, we're going to make money. And we're probably going to train people, and we're going to have fun doing it. So that's I felt like a pretty good, just basic strategy to look at. And so tactically though, how do you do that? Right. And so a couple of ideas and a couple of ways that I've helped and looked at different things at these levels with different companies that I've worked for, and some ideas here would be these 3 tactics. And the tactic number 1 would be for procurement, we would look at looking at tactically implementing a sales and procurement guide. And so what that tactic would entail would be a setup and a process and an alignment of tactical ways to look at sales and procurement to procure profitable work. And then tactic number 2 in pre-construction would be, you know what, we're going to build a standard operating procedures manual, or a manual in such a way, because pre-construction or turnover sometimes can be a little bit challenging. We don't start our work there. We have people that are, it's kind of this in-between space, little gray zone. We're always like, how do we really want to get a bid to a turnover to a win? And for general contractors, it's procurement to pre-construction to construction. I know, and it's procurement to turnover to construction. And so this turnover phase that's there, we might need some better manual ideas. So implementing a tactic of, I'm going to put just some generalized thoughts about what that looks like together so I can train people on what turnover looks like, is important in Win 2. And that could, again, support profitable work. And then last but not least is the construction operations. And so, you know, I know that we talked about, and I think there was actually some other things happening in other areas of the SUBStrong event here, where there's people always talking about employees. And so one idea, you know, that's out there, and this is, again, not a new concept, but you can use this tactic in construction operations, because that's where most of your new people probably will be starting, will be to say, if you don't have an employee handbook, you know, use your employee handbook and use it tactically in the operations areas to know how to train, or where people go, what they do, just simple thought processes of how to tactically apply, or be tactical about application. And again, if you do that, you're going to, again, build profitable work, because everybody's going to know what they're doing. And what are all 3 of these do? Consistency, clarity. A new hire all the way through your most seasoned veteran can use this type of work or these types of ideas. And that's the thought process around being tactical. And so again, very simple, very basic. And these are some examples, again, additional procurement tactics. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take each of these 3 areas, and I'm going to outline a few more ideas just to kind of talk through these 3 different areas, staying at this high broad level, just to kind of talk through what that looks like tactically for each of these areas. So in this system, and win number 1, you know, we talked about a sales guide. However, there are specifics within that guide, or specifics that you may want to think about to put together additional tactical areas that you want to assign people to within in this specific strategy. So right now, a couple of ideas. You know, one thing that really is important for tactics and for understanding is the way that you talk to people and the way that you have your entire company looking clarity. And so these 3 areas, or these few areas here, are tactical ideas that apply to procurement. Number 1, you need to understand your company unique's preferred customer characteristics. I believe very strongly that a target account and a client base is a very, well, how should I say this? A very important and critical way to keep clarity on how procurement happens and for procuring profitable work. Without an understanding of who your key target accounts are, or if you are not aligned on key target accounts, you cannot apply tactics to that account or understand what you're going to do in order to gain work or reoccurring work even better from your account. So without some awareness of what you are, or what the preferred customer characteristics of your target accounts are, it's very hard to take an account and make tactics happen. For example, if I'm a roofing contractor, just going to pick it out, and I know that over the past 2 years, my 25% of my roofing contracts have come from client 1. And I don't know that, and I just assume it, or I don't understand what my accounts are, or I don't understand what my characteristics are with this account. It's hard for me to go say, oh, well, I'm really going to go knock down and be tactical about this roofing contractor's next job. I can do it, but it's not going to be where I'm going to have to do it. I may not have the whole team doing it. So if I have John Smith on project number 1 with that contractor, and I have Jane Doe on project number 2 with that contractor, and I'm already on their projects, do John Smith and Jane Doe really know and understand that project number 3 is coming up in the future? and being able to look at that and have this group method and group target market or group target account thought process is very extremely positive. And companies that can do that, I believe, are much better positioned in the future for work, for good work that comes down the line. So again, tactical thoughts on how that happens. And then I also see some ideas that some other things I also see that always gets a little bit confusing or makes tactics really hard is what target markets and target geographical areas specifically are you looking at? Right now, you know, there's so much work or different things that is out there, and being very target and very specific is extremely important to tactics. And so, you know, I just was in a meeting last week where I had an owner tell me a story, and I grew up on the farm. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota, and had told me a story about this give an analogy on this, and I think this is really applies very greatly to this tactic. You know, it's like there are two farmers on a road, on a county road, looking at their crops, and one's on the left of the truck and one's on the right of the truck, and the one on the left of the truck's looking at his crop and it looks great. It's very robust, hugely awesome, very good crop. The farmer on the right is looking at his crop and it's just not very good, and it's looking very weak. And the farmer on the right says to the farmer on the left, what do you do differently? That's the same dirt, it's the same land, we have the same rain. There's nothing different between these two fields. It's the same thing. And the farmer on the left says to the farmer on the right, I put my shadow on my fields. And you know, to me, what that means is I put my shadow out there. And it's like, to me, it means you have to be very on top of your target account, target market, and target geographic key to put your shadow on where you're at. If you don't have your shadow in your market and in your geographic area specifically, and I mean specifically, like in Denver, and my experience in Denver, you can say downtown Denver and the tech center, and those are two different target geographic areas, different owners, different people, different accounts. And so to put your shadow on, or to know where your shadow is in your target market or your target geographic area specifically, to put your shadow on that is a very important step in understanding tactics, because you may have different tactics in the tech center than you do downtown or at DIA or at even at, you know, up in northern Colorado. All of those different areas, it's very important for tactics to understand where you're at tactically or where you're at geographically, and specifically for those markets. Another area that I believe is also important for tactics is, where are your strategic industry partners? Do you have partners in the industry that you can use for tactics? And so how does that apply to the industries? And obviously we're in one of the industry partners events right now. And so for everybody that's here, congratulations, you have created some of this tactical advantage that you're looking for. And so all of that does impact and apply all this procurement and how to apply procurement tactics. And then last but not least, tactics require metrics. And so if you don't get on my suggestion would be is to get on a cadence of accountability, or a cadence of reviewing your whatever KPIs you have for tactical response, and then see how your tactics are doing. Right now, it's very easy to set an annual plan up in October, November, when you're sitting down and doing your company reviews, and then not look at it again until October, November of next year and say, how did we do? And it's like, wow, that's pretty risky, in my opinion. I would say I would want to look at it in October, November, and look at where I'm going in my procurement for next year. But then quarterly, at least sit down and say, gee, how did the first quarter go? And we do this. I mean, we do this as leaders. However, do we do it with our teams and make it become a really tactical part with our teams and our workforce and our people in procurement? Do we really sit down and do that so that their goals are based on it, so that all of the actions are based on it? They know where we're going. We don't under procure or potentially over procure work, because sometimes over procurement might be an issue as well. And so reviewing those quarterly KPIs is real important to keep our healthy procurement activity started and win at procuring good work. And so with that, I'm gonna kind of leave that. I'm as you can tell, I'm super passionate about procurement. I really honestly believe that tactics in procurement set the stage for how good projects run. And if you are very tactical in procurement, boy, you can really avoid a lot of risk down the line, especially in turnover and in construction. If you procure bad work or work for owners or clients that are challenging, man, that makes things hard. So being tactical and understanding procurement is so very important, for your guide and for your company. So next piece is I'm a general contractor, so don't look bad at me on that. I have obviously worked and been involved recently now in the last 4 years in smaller businesses with subcontractors, and so I understand turnover versus pre-construction, and that way I always include them both for the audiences that I talk to. Just a quick little note here: pre-construction and turnover, I believe, are different, and it's good to know the difference, because if you are a contractor or a subcontractor that is involved on a project that has a general contractor who is in pre-construction, pay attention in this stage, because the budgeting that you're doing, or the work that you're doing for their pre-construction efforts, pre-project award, let's just say, has to be tactical, right? So it's important to know, once again, in this tactical nature, it's very important to know, if you're working with contractors that are in pre-construction, to understand where they're at in pre-construction, what pre-construction is, how it works, what it looks like, how it feels, so that you're not just spinning your wheels bidding, quote unquote, what you think is out there, but really you're just budgeting. And so I believe that there's always some confusion out there, and general contractors are guilty of wasting people's time in this mode, and aligning and having a need all the time. Everything's hot. Oh my God, I need this tomorrow. I need that tomorrow, right? It's always the way that our world works in pre-construction. And so to slow that area down and to understand where we're at tactically, it's very important to understand. So a good little training or tactical method there for people to think about. And then internally to turnover, what that looks like on tactics is, how are we going to, once we win a job, how do we turn that over and align ourselves up so we look at our long lead items, we understand labor and manpower, we know where we're headed with contracts and vendors, and understanding material delivery timeframes and all of the material fabrication needs that we have, or equipment needs that we have. What does that really look like, and when to lots of tactics with that too. So in order to win make that second win happen, there's got to be some kind of a system or some kind of an alignment structure around those kinds of things too. And so I believe if there's any needs out there that I see that are out there in the industry right now, it's the need for locking down some kind of systems throughout what the pre-construction and turnover tactics are, because we don't do them every day, right? We do the operations part every day. We do the bidding every day, but some of these turnovers it only happens when we win, in between a win and a start. So there's always a need there for tactical understanding of what that looks like. A couple of ideas with that. I've seen some different areas where some companies now are talking about this 5-tier estimating system. It's a bigger concept, but I wanted to throw it out there for tactical use. What this is it's a way that that companies can take their pre-construction turnover, whatever that looks like, areas of budgeting. Let's say when I'm in this, I got a budget for people, and to know what you're actually to set up a system that what you're actually providing. So this 5-tier estimating system looks like this. Tier number 1 is where I'm just doing a high level gross per square foot. Like somebody calls you, I'm using my roofing example again. It's like, hey, I've got a EPDM roof. It's 5,000 square feet, or it's 250,000 square feet. How much do you think it is? And your initial response is, that's $25 a square foot. That's your first, your first tier system, right? The second tier system is, here's an example. I'm the roofing contractor. He said, hey, I got a set of quick drawings to look at. They're very early, but it's some concept documents for 3 tiers and whatever. You have drawings to look at, and you say, oh yeah, this is going to be, looks like, oh, here it is. Oh, there's some parapets and things in that, some metal here or there. And you do a quick little sketch and a concept budget. Same thing, but a little bit more drawings. And then you get into the last 3 phases. So now you get into where you're going to look into the last 3 phases. So there's schematic design, design development, and construction documents. So for this type of program, you would say, all right, well, what is my level going to be? And a lot of times this lumps into one thing. So maybe from a 5-tier estimating system, it turns into a 3-tier or 2-tier, or whatever your company needs are. But it would say, anything after that, if I have drawings, I'm going to use my hard bid estimating, or I'm going to bid this job, and I'm going to give you a bid number, because that's my tactical response I'm going to use for a job. And that would be whether I see schematic design documents, design development documents, or construction documents, whatever that is. I'm going to use that for tactics and understand what those kind of drawings look like. Again, risk management here, depending on where you're at, risks can be avoided using any one of those or all of them. And tactically, you can set yourself up for potential work in the future if you do that well, or if you train your team to do it well, and stay consistent specifically with your accounts. Because anytime you're just throwing out garbage, in my mind, it's like people lose. If you're not consistent with what you're putting out into the industry, or clear about what you're putting out in the industry, and we're going to talk about that in tomorrow or in this afternoon. Very challenging for people to really understand and look at what that is from the receiving end. So think about that. It's a very clear tactic thing that should or can be used out there in this phase. These last few things, and once again, I'm sorry if I'm gonna be a little more specific today and get on my little rants here about what I believe happens, but that's one of them for sure. Second one here is going to be, or these other ones that are there, vendor and subcontractor assessments. Some things that are out there, if you have a database or you need a database of who your true vendors and subcontractors that work for you are, or different people that are around, what are you using? Are you valuing, do you just go to the same person every time, or do you need to be tactical and looking for different vendors and subcontractors? Specifically to my roofing contractor, do I really need to, buy the metal and buy my attachments and buy my APDM always from Firestone? Or should I be looking at something different? Should I be looking at what my other areas that are out there, or different, vendors that I could be getting a competitive advantage for material on could be? A couple other tactical ideas in pre-construction and turnover is a construction phasing analysis. Like, really be specific about what you want to do for construction phasing. Internal turnover meetings. I know there's ideas out there and different ways to do internal turnover meetings, but being tactical about that and knowing when to do them and how to do them is a good idea to throw out there as a tactical idea. Estimate reviews can be even used as tactical. How you want to do that on a job that you're really focused on, and how many reviews you need is something to think about. And then last but not least, contingency, or how do you want to bid risk, and what does that look like? Always tactical, always looking ahead at what that looks like and knowing where the job risks are. Just some thoughts on where tactics can be applied in this area. So with that, I'll move into win number 3. And if you have questions on any of this, I know that I'm not looking at questions right now. So if there are questions, type them into the chat area, and then when we get done, we'll just look at the chat and see if there are any questions, and I'll just run through all the chat area when I get done. So win number 3, same thing applies here. So now we're off and we're starting actually the work. And so, here's where some tactics can be applied into where we're at in the third win, construction operations. First and foremost, team placement. I view this as maybe the most important tactical way to look at work for construction operations, because if you have a team that doesn't work with the job you're at, we all know as leaders that will definitely cause risk and potentially profit erosion, just based on relationships. So the tactical way we look at our teams and how we place them on our jobs is very important for alignment, again, all the way through procurement, through turnover, and into construction. Again, this is probably nothing new, but it's something that has to be paid attention to on every job, again, from start to finish. We've talked a little bit, I haven't gotten really too far into the software and data management portions, and it's maybe way in the weeds when it comes to how tactics are applied. But today's world is based largely on contractors or owners that require some kind of software and data management on their projects. And so to know and understand who your clients are and what software and data management platform they use. So if it's Prolog, whatever, PM4, or whatever the hell it's going to be, or Procore, or all these different software data management platforms, very important to be tactical about that. And it's not a strategy. It's very tactical. And so to understand what that means, and then stay consistent and throughout the job setup, and understanding what your software and data management requirements are, you can be tactical about all that and know how you're going to use that, because that can become very cumbersome and not very easy on lots of jobs. And so that's something to pay attention to. Cost forecasting is probably fairly common in our industry with tactics. being clear about how to cost forecast and know where that's at is a pretty simple and easy way to think about it. And then we get into these last ones that I think just apply. And if you have them, great. And if you are not using tactics for safety and quality control and construction scheduling and planning and things like that, and planning your work and planning it safe, planning it with high quality and looking at that, there's tons of ideas. And I'd love to rattle on about, how many step quality control plan you may need, or what the site specific safety plan encompasses with tactics. But all of those 3 items that we do for costs, safety, quality control, and scheduling and planning, all of them are individually required tactics, and I could talk for another 3 hours on each of them as needed, but I'm not going to do that today. So I'm just going to leave that on the shelf. And then last but not least, tactically, you have to talk about closeout. How are we going to get paid? Retainage today is hard to get all the time, and I know that there's been efforts out there to make it to get better, but without closeout and working on a tactical way to do closeout, wow, it can be, retainage can take, I don't know how long for all of you what your longest story is, but I bet if I polled you all, you would all have a horror story about closing out a job and how long it took to get your retainage. So anyway, that's kind of it. So with that, I also have this idea, or this area that I wanted to share with you all about a tactical application, and a story that I had and a way to think about a training, little tactical way to think about training here, that I learned from my time with Hensel Phelps and a project downtown Denver that we had, where we were working at the Denver Justice Center. I was the project executive on that job, and my general superintendent at the time was named Sean McConkey, and he and I had an owner with the city, and we would always have these meetings. And what we eventually started to think of it came from Sean McConkey. So if he's out there and you know him, you can tell him that I say hello, number one, and that I'm rattling off his predicting a storm here to make it tactical. And the way we thought about this was, it's our job in the industry to it's like, if you think of like we're driving a ship, and you're on every job we have this journey that we're on from start to finish, and along the way we have potential storms that are out there. But the first thing we have to do is we have to make a tactical plan on how to get from the start to the finish of this job. And it's our responsibility to do that and have our teams prepared to go from start to finish. And that will give them the ability along the way to apply tactics when they see storms that are out there. And I just threw a couple, and I'm not going to go through these, but I just threw a couple of things out there that would align this idea into how a tactical application on a project could happen for your teams. And so, I thought that this was a good way to be very extremely tactical on work, and I use this all the time in different ways. And you can apply this and relate this to many different applications around different things in any kind of a system from start to finish, and say we have to have a plan. Number one, it's got to be tactical. What are we going to do? And then when it happens, because I'm probably going to have to change it, probably going to have things that happen, I'm probably going to have risks that come up, I'm going to have storms that happen, and I'm going to have to manage around them. And that's what we do as managers and leaders. So I use this all over the place, and felt that it was a good way to think about application for being tactics. So I've said this, and there's some more thoughts here about applying tactics and competitive advantage. If you again align your business with your strategy into tactics, the goal that you're shooting for is always this competitive advantage and a profit enhancement. And so here are just some ideas. I'll just walk through these really quickly. Some ideas about ways to get, why this is important in gaining a competitive advantage if we need to even take it even further. But really, I'm just going to look at the middle one there first. Is tactics drives optimization. Going back to my storm theory, you can optimize yourself very quickly and optimize your teams in clarity and consistency really quickly using simple tactics. And so, and ultimately managing risk. And so, where the risks are, and you can manage around them and manage conflict within a system very cleanly and consistently. Because the last 2 bullets, today's market demands high level tactics. It demands it. And it also, data management today demands high level tactics too. If you're just letting the market and data drive you and move you, you are in constant firefighting mode. And tactically early on in the project, that is where we need to align clarity, set it up, know where we're headed, figure it out, because there's going to be storms, and align tactics throughout the entire job. So it will help align how that happens for sure, and getting through it is there. So if I haven't hammered it home enough here, the guide would look like this. A couple of other ideas about tactics, strategy level, these different strategy levels, bringing that thought process again back from the strategy discussion we had yesterday, all the way into how it can apply. At a corporate level, another idea, a guide could be, in order to create this environment of clarity, a quarterly employee all hands meeting. It's a simple thought. A lot of times it's really hard to execute. We talk about it a lot, but are we really going to execute that and do that sort of a meeting? It's a good thing to put in. Good thing to put in to, again, provide clarity, a tactical way to input in your corporate, in your business, a high level meeting to get everybody on the same page. At the business level, I just picked one. I said, well, leveraging strategic partnerships could be a way to tactically align what you're going to do. I talked a lot about procurement. I'm a hugely passionate person about procurement and how to leverage that in. There's a lot of ideas and tactics to use in procurement on what that looks like. This is just one idea. And then last but not least, on this functional level, we talked about it, the 5-tier estimating program. How do you then functionally put it into your program in order so that you know when it's going out, you stay consistent and put out tactical estimates so that you can be competitive and gain a competitive advantage amongst your competition in the market with the people you want to work for, so that you end up with good work turned over correctly and built, in the time frame that you need it to be built with. So with that, wow, hopefully that's a lot of data. Talk about drinking from a fire hose for everyone, probably including myself. In closing here, some guide thoughts on tactics. First of all, to go back to the beginning, tactics are actions. Strategy is the aim. So when you're thinking about this, when you're thinking about strategy and tactics, the guide needs to be, what's our strategy? And then how are we going to get there? What are the tactics and the actions we need to take to get to the primary strategy? Very important. Sometimes forgotten about or talked about incorrect, or I think talked about confusing, but gain clarity between what's your strategy? How are we going to get there with tactics? Guide to post number 1. Number 2, train an application of tactics to maneuver storm's risk. My opinion, strong opinion of using tactics is to create this, environment of an application, a system that moves us through these areas of what we do, and then a tactical way to maneuver around risk. If we can do that, we are going to win more than one time. We're going to win. We're going to start winning 3 times. I believe that if you can start it way back in procurement, it even gets better. So if you can create this, how we're going to get there, this way to understand, this tactical way to get through a project, if you can start that in procurement and bring it all the way through construction, you can multiply your bid margin and add money to your bottom line very, very quickly by taking and using this tactical way to look at each project individually. And again, the 3-win system that I shared with you, again, that's something that you can use and apply into your thought process. I've been applying it everywhere I go as much as I can. I really believe in it. It's something that over the course of my 25 years, I've really seen it work. And I think that the more people I can train and help do that, the more people, lives get easier, jobs get simpler, and we can be a better overall industry. So I'm sharing this everywhere I go. But it's a very easy clarity example of how to get tactical with an overall process. Data management, think tactical. And so I go back to my story about software and about all of the stuff that's out there, some good and some absolutely terrible. And so in order to look at data and look at the way that these different data platforms are being utilized or expected, think tactical, know where you're at, understand what's expected early on, know where you're going, train your teams to be tactical about how to use it, what to do. Don't overlook it. If you do not stay clear on what that requirement is, or have your people and your teams and wherever they are, you have to be tactical about data and about processes out there in today's world. If you just gloss over it and it's not clear and you don't allow clarity, you're going to get burned. I have been burned. I've been burned a lot. So think tactical, be aware of it. Same thing with technology and resources internally. How do you manage and understand what your current technology resources internally to your company? You have to be tactical and you have to know where you're at. Sometimes implementing tactical internal resources inside your company become challenging. So working in the business or on the business, it's like you have to be tactical there too. So it's what's out there in data world and internally within the company, you need to be tactical throughout all of that as well, because data in win 1 equals data in win 2 equals data in win 3. And so all the data that is there that we produce, and we create a ton of data, that's a tactical thing you have to really understand to be tactical with data. Sorry, again, probably too much on a soapbox, but seen it happen over and over and over again where the data is a problem. So, and then last but not least, some ideas, I didn't talk much about this, but if I'm just going to quickly relate this, areas where there's conflict could be an indicator that you need a tactical response. I'll just use an example of this data. So if you have a job that's struggling with any kind of data or submittals or management of a project or different things that are out there, you probably want to think tactical. So anytime that you see conflicts out there or feel conflict or train people to feel conflict, the first thing you should, how many get tactical, because you're in a storm, right? So it's like, you're probably in a storm if you have conflict. Are you aware of the storm? Do you know what the storm is? And how are we going to apply tactics to get out of the storm? So just a quick thought on that, and an application for tactical response here at the end. So anyway, with that, I'm again a little early, but that's okay, because I feel like being a little early is always a good thing with what we do. So with that, I'm going to back myself back out of this presentation mode here and get back to my screen and look at who's all here still. Looks like everybody's still here. Hopefully we're all here and everybody can still hear me. Chat wise, I'm in the chat right now, so you can see my screen. I'm sorry that I've got the hall of foreverness going in here. Does anyone have any questions or any thoughts or anything you'd like to ask or share or do anything with tactics? This afternoon, I'm gonna go into consistency and try to wrap this into a way that all of these different ideas come together. A lot of this afternoon's presentation is going to be with graphics and a sharing of these 3 different areas and how it kind of comes together between early identification, strategy, being tactical, and then consistency with leadership and consistency with training. So hopefully this afternoon we can wrap up this whole process and really isolate and get this guide pulled together for how you can use it and how it can look at different ways. And what I'm trying to do is give you some ideas for what that looks like into the future. So with that, let me just stop sharing here. Sorry, I probably could have done that earlier. With that, Candy, I'm pretty much done. If we're good.
All right. Well, thanks, Grant. Just to let everyone know that since I think most everybody missed part 2 yesterday because of the technical issues we were having with Hopin, that it was recorded, so it will be on the SUBStrong library for you guys to go back and review, because I feel like his presentation yesterday was really good about strategy. So definitely check that out when that gets posted, I think within 10 days.
Well, and you know what? I might just flip through that. Knowing that, I can flip through the slides really quick and just kind of work through it, because it's pretty important. I mean, it'll be kind of a refresher here. I can probably flip through it quick at the beginning of the next session, or even, well, I don't want to do it now. Maybe I can do it at the beginning of the next session here. Just flip through it really fast. It wouldn't take too long just to kind of get the concepts. But the key components was that graphic that I used, the 3 different areas of the graphic, which was knowing that you need strategy in do it now. Scott says do it now. We have 13 minutes. Game on. Let's do it. Let me pull it up here. Stand by. Let's do it. I'm gonna show you guys this. I'm gonna show you guys this the strategy stuff here really quick. Okay. Let me share my screen again, and we'll go through. I'll flip through this really fast and kind of show you this some of these ideas here. All right, strategy. Here we go. Okay, so this is the strategy part that I went through yesterday. Same graphic, same concept. What does it mean to realize strategy? The part on strategy, what I talked about yesterday was that it's a plan of action to achieve a major aim, right? It's setting the objectives and understanding where you're at to improve your financial stability. So this is a big thought process. How am I going to improve my financial stability? And it's just a high level plan to help a business achieve the long-term goals. And what I said was this graphic is a good idea. It's like, I got to get over here, and how am I going to put this bridge over what I'm going to do? And that's a high level goal. So this one, for some reason, this is an important part here to think through. There's two different ways that you think about strategy, in my opinion, when it comes to strategy. You can either do strategic planning, which is a high level affirming a mission. We don't have a mission or a vision. We need something, or we need to update it. We need this strategic planning session. Typically, a strategic planning session is a day or 2 days, probably with a third-party person that's off-site, your leadership team and your group. You're going to have this like really big high level group involvement with this strategic planning umbrella, probably 1, 2, 3, 5 years out, kind of an idea, depending on what, if you're using a traction model or you're using other different models that you have. There's a lot of different strategic planning models that are out there. Like StratOp would be one of them that I know is out there, or traction, or these different things that are out there. You do this big strategic planning. And then there's this other type, which is this annual plan. If you know kind of where you're going and you know what you want to do on the strategic, high level strategic planning, now what we look at an annual strategy plan, which is how are we going to get this next year involved, and what are we going to do? What are the nuts and bolts strategies we need this year to do over the coming year? Example I think I used yesterday was like, we are going to put together a project coordinator boot camp. Is, what I mean? That's going to help it's going to be, going to be a strategy that we can do for the annual. Or we need to adjust our procurement. We just talked about it. It's like, I need to implement an estimating program this year. I've got to put it, what is it? I got to make estimating, have estimating training would be a way to think about it. Something annual or several annual strategies that can do that. So I started dissecting this into these 3 different levels, because that's a big, huge umbrella, right? So I like to think of it in 3 different levels. There's a corporate level, there's the business level, and there's a functional level. So strategy applied in these different areas, corporately, business, functional, can be, then now we can start refining it. Because I think Candy and I joked about this, actually. We said, you know what, there's so many areas. Like, you could, if you want to be a strategic person, you could be strategic in anywhere, and all you're going to do is strategy. And that's unrealistic. So you have to kind of refine yourself into where do I need it? Where the strategy am I looking for? What am I really going to do? And put it into these buckets. You could spend all your time just at a corporate level strategy for 1 whole year and say, I'm just going to implement a corporate level strategy. That's what I need today. Next year, business level. Finally, next year after that, functional level. Or I got to move faster than that. I need corporate and business all at the same time. And then my functional I'm going to do next year, or, whatever that looks like, right? So thinking about it in these 3 different levels is something to consider. And then here's some of the questions, and I think these are pretty good questions to ask if you're looking for, do you need a strategy? So it's like, are you focused on winning? Are you fighting for clarity? Do you have buy-in? How is your execution? Are you in critical time of transition? Are there enormous opportunities on the horizon? Do you have competing priorities and new personnel? All of these questions, if you say yes to these questions, you probably want to start thinking about strategy. So that's kind of some ideas, just thoughts on how to, like, what am I looking for to say I need strategy? Because remember, tactical is the storm. So remember, we just talked about, it's like, I'm already in the storm. I need tactics to get around the storm. Strategy is, what am I trying to do to get this plan to start to finish? How do I get the start to finish part to strategize about what do I want start to finish to look like? That's what we're going for in strategy. And then this tool is, I think, this tool is a really good tool to also start refining your core concepts into what you really need to strategize about. And so this guide, this 4 helpful list guide, you simply take a list with your leadership team and say, what's right, what's wrong, what's confused, what's missing. Apply it to corporate. What's right, what's wrong, what's confused, what's missing. You can start honing in, and there are people out there that do this, or you can, of course, internally do this too, and start honing in on what these core items are, and where you're looking for to really hone in on what strategy look like. And obviously the goal is to accurately reflect. Your goal is clarity, which is to accurately get clarity. What are we trying to do? Gain perspective, evaluate areas, and then align the strategy. Because again, there's not enough hours in the day to put strategy everywhere. You got to know where your strategy wants to be and refine it down into the areas that really drive bottom line. That's what you're going for, is clarity to drive bottom line. And so I threw out this idea. There's a book, and this book, I'm not going to talk about this. This is just a pretty good idea. Me and a friend of mine, another person I strategize with, we talk about this. It's like these 4 things are really important. You know, building a cohesive leadership team, clarity, clarity, clarity. So I'm pushing clarity because clarity is the key component in all of what we talk about clarity. And for the guide, you're always looking for clarity. And so these questions we talked about, some questions to ask if you're wondering if you have clarity. Here's a couple of questions to throw out there to people that you're working with. You know, ask people if they know why your organization exists. What are the fundamental values? Do people really understand what the fundamental values of your company are? Do you know what business you're in? Do the people know what business you're in? Do they know that you're whatever it is? Do we know who the competitors are? Do we know that our 2 main competitors are here and here? And you know, that provides clarity because we are going to align strategy or tactics around how to, you know, gain a competitive advantage, right? And if you don't know who they are, well, then, you know, then I'm sure that's an easy one, but it's a simple way to, again, relate things. You know, what are the major goals? You know, like, what are we going for right now? What is our major goals? Do people really understand that? And then who's responsible for doing what? You know, you may want to strategize around that. Who's a responsibility task list is a good way to think about strategy too. Like, do we have a strategy? Is it working? Is there clarity? Bottom line question. You know, some ideas to kind of ask or contemplate, you know, what that looks like. So again, the benefits, I don't need to probably go through this one either. Creates a sense of unity. It agrees on strategic concepts. Everybody's in the same page. And what I went through here, and if you listen to the video, I think I'm not going to probably give this justice, but if you do all these things, if you understand and contribute and you align strategy, people who understand strategy, they know what their purpose is inside of. They automatically, if you give clarity to strategy, people will automatically, purpose and passion will rise to the top because they get on and they start rowing in the same direction. So the goal of strategy is to get everybody going in the same direction, and then the benefits, the kind of thought benefits are people's purpose and passion rise out of strategy because they see where they're going, and all of a sudden, I know where I'm going, I'm on board, and my purpose and passion, my role is on this strategy is known, and boom, I have it, and it starts happening. And so that's the clarity part of it. And then these are a couple of examples, again, I gave for different business perspectives. So I threw out this idea of enterprise strategy, you know, this idea of what are we going to do with the company? What are we going to do with documentation level? What are we going to do at process level? So again, a strategy needs to be thought about and thoughtful because you can't put strategy everywhere, nor should you. So it's where do we need it? What does it look like? And how do we apply it? And then last but not least, you know, I threw out this graphic at the bottom. I think this is exactly what the graphic at the bottom to me explains the whole thing. You know, without strategy, you're just going in lots of directions. If you get the direction with strategy, you're going to go in a direction, and you're going to gain that passion and purpose with your team. And leadership must be involved. You can't do this in a vacuum. Strategy is not a vacuum thing. Have to have your leadership team involved. And then, you know, last but not least, I mean, people who do strategy in today's space will find, hire, and retain the most qualified people. If you're not doing it, you're not finding, hiring, or for surely retaining, because if people don't see a strategy and know where they're headed globally as a company or as a business unit, they're going to go find a place that will have that. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And so if you don't have a strategy, get one. That was the message. And so, you know, to hold down the fort and know where we're going in today's market and understanding, and I think the graphic on the right there shows it pretty well. The vision and the clarity, you need that. And so that graphic that I'm going to stick to, the 3 levels, was where we were at. So hopefully I did that justice. I'm 3 minutes now, 3 minutes now early. So, being done. So hopefully that gives, I hope that gives a little bit better view of yesterday's second session. So that was quick. but at least hopefully that's kind of an alignment. So any other questions or comments? Is that good?
That was good. I think that it's still worth the watch of the other one, but or of your full presentation. But I think that was a really good overview, and will probably help when you wrap everything up in the 4th session.
For sure. Yep. No, the 4th this afternoon at 1 o'clock. We'll, like I said, I'm trying to throwing out a bunch of different ideas. I'm going to try to get them refined into one spot and keep a clear guide for consistency. Because if I'm not consistent, well then, good God, what am I? You know, it's like, man, I really need to be consistent. So here we go. We're going to implement consistency this afternoon. So.
Yeah, and I think with all the talk of how to keep employees and retain employees, that this is another good thing just to apply to that as well, of having clear direction will help you also retain employees because they know where they're going. And like we kind of talked about, is maybe even being able to give them timelines of, you know, where we're going, and keeping the chaos down, and being clear and keeping everything, you know, with the clarity. So.
Correct. No, I mean that what I said there at the end, and that point is you have to have it in order to hire and train the best people and retain them today. Without it, you're at risk. You're at risk for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Grant, and then we'll see you all at 1.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
See you at 1. Okay. Bye.